Pornography, premarital sex, and masturbation destroyed my life. And here's the story.
Earth angel, will you be mine, my darling dear? Love you all the time. I'm just a fool in love with you.
As early as I can remember, that song permeated my mind, and beautiful women dancing to that melody was all I could think about sometimes. Even though I was only 4 years old, I had a deep love and admiration for women. Didn't matter if you were 5 or 50. If I thought you were beautiful, just seeing you would make my day. I love the way women talked. I love the way they thought. I love the way they smelled. I love what they did. I loved how they adored me. And growing up, my mom taught me how to be a perfect gentleman. I would compliment a lady on her looks. I would help women with their bags. I will be as respectful to them as possible. And I love that part of who I was. I loved being that young man that was respectable and knew how to carry himself with respect when it came to women. But something changed as I got older and I started to hit puberty. Brewing deep inside of me was not a desire for respect, but it was a desire to take what they had. At 14, I was at my friend's house, and his neighbor's dad had a treasure trove of porn tapes, and he would bring them over and we would watch them. To an already hormone driven teenage boy, this just turned me into a sex fiend. My sinful mind objectified women at least once an hour, and my body reacted like any man who is turned on would. I then followed a natural path of a degenerate from porn to objectification of women to masturbation using women in my life that I saw and talked to and even considered me a friend, or worst, women in my family. After the masturbation phase, I graduated to premarital sex, then to womanizing. All the while, my consumption of porn was increasing and the images getting more nasty and perverted. I watched things that I'm still ashamed of today. From womanizing, I then move to anger at women for being so easy and complicit in my sinful endeavors. But truly, I was angry at myself because the good little boy I was told I was and ever still perpetrated for certain women had long gone, and all that was left was a man drowning in sin and locked in a cycle of desiring a woman, going out on a date or two, having sex, becoming bored of her, going to clinics for 36-hour abortion pills, desiring another woman, having a sexual relationship with both, then breaking it off with one, and the cycle would repeat itself. After a while, I got tired of having to pretend like I cared about what women were saying, and I wanted to get straight to the sex. So I went on chat lines. Even though it had less hot women, they were more willing to cut to the chase. I went on hookup sites, and I even started paying prostitutes. All the while, porn was my constant go to for when I didn't hook up with a chick, or when I was bored, or turned on but didn't feel like having company. Even crazier still, most of the time, I had a girlfriend who came to family events, received Valentine's Day, birthday, Christmas gifts. We even went on dates. She spent the night, and I even proclaimed my undying love for her. But my sexual appetite grew. My consequences for sex got worse, from heartbreaks to pregnancy scares to run ins with boyfriends to STD scares. But I continued. Finally, I got to the point where sex was just robotic, or like watching TV. You did it every day in some way, but I got little satisfaction, and it was making my health worse, both spiritually and physically.
This magic moment, so different and so new, was like any other until I kiss you, and then it happened. It took me by surprise. I knew that you felt it too.
Every now and then, I would daydream about that kid with wonder in his eyes and respect for women in his heart. But the truth is, I had bought the world's lies and jumped headlong into sexual sin and pornography. And now I was a prisoner to the very thing I chased. Finally, it got to the point where after every sexual encounter, I would literally lay in the fetal position and cry, or just remain there for an hour or two. My spirit was being destroyed by what my body was doing, and I was reaping the consequences. On one occasion, I met a girl on a chat line, and she lived about an hour away from where I was. I drove to her house, picked her up. I think we ate dinner. We then proceeded to go to a motel. Went to a motel, did what we wanted to do, enjoyed ourselves, had fun in the worldly sense. I headed back home to go to sleep. No sooner as I closed my eyes, maybe 20 minutes, all of a sudden the room got cold and my bed started to shake. I could not sleep after that incident for 3 years. As always, porn was my constant companion. When I would get home from work, I would look at it. I would look at it at work. Um, in fact, I was at work on the night shift one time, and I was alone in the building, but I started to watch porn and ended up self gratifying right there in my office. It was a humiliating moment in my life. From there, I would go to sex shops or sex stores. And I remember there was one that I frequented quite often. And as I was coming out, and at this point I was supposed to be a Christian, as I was coming out of one of the my main porn store, one of my coworkers was driving into the parking lot. So I ducked behind a car and waited for him to go inside. The final straw came when I was at a particular porn store, but all the arcades were occupied. Arcades were these booths where you can go in and pay, like $10 for 15 minutes and watch all the porn you want. And it was an isolated booth. So a lot of people would end up self gratifying, masturbating. They even had tissue in there and other things. And I remember it just smelled like death. It just smelled gross. But all the booths were filled at my particular store that I would always go to. So I had to drive maybe a couple miles down and go to the store that I didn't really go that much, but they had arcades. And when I was going in to the arcade, I remember it had a sign on the door, and the sign said, only one person at a time. I kind of shrugged it off and went in there, started watching a movie, watching other movies, whatever, because you can click to, there was like 15 movies you can just click around. And as I was watching it, a man started to knock on the door, and I remember getting scared, like, what is going on? And so the knocking stopped, and I continued doing what I was doing. I finished, and as I was leaving the store, there was a man following me out to my car, you know, and I didn't think of nothing too much of it because it was men in there. And I got into my car, and as I was looking down at my cell phone, this man looks into my window and propositions me for some kind of homosexual act. I immediately drove away and never looked back. And that was the last time that I used any kind of those stores. And I started to separate myself from porn and premarital sex. Pornography destroyed my life. It left me empty. It left me destroyed. It left me ruined. It took a lot from me. It took my time and my years, and it left me with desires that God had to cleanse. It took so much from my life because I started to put my sexual gratification over the truth of God. I beg you, brothers, get free today.